This down even further for you with GOP strategist Chris Neiweem and Democratic political commentator Jonathan Harris. Great to have you two with us. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. All right, Chris, starting with you, your quick reaction to the race for Republican Senate leadership. Insiders are saying now that maybe down to Thune and Cornyn, but Marco Rubio just throwing his support on X behind Rick Scott this afternoon. Will Republicans be able to get on the same page?
I think they will. I mean, my guess would be it would lean towards Senator Cornyn or Senator Scott. You know, Florida has a very tight Republican delegation there. A lot of strong leadership coming out of there, from whether it's the governor, Congressman Corey Mills, the president obviously has a residence in Florida. I think Rick Scott would make sense, and then Senator Cornyn, also very conservative, very well experienced. I think we would probably look at Senator Thune as being a little more establishment. I think there's been a little cooler reaction to him, so I'm leaning towards Senator Cornyn or Senator Scott, someone the president feels comfortable with culturally and on policy issues that he can work well with. Because as we know, Mitch McConnell and President Trump haven't had the most harmonious relationship when it comes to agreeing on legislative and executive policy.
Yeah, well, Republicans are feeling really good with this red wave and, yeah, feeling great, looking for this trifecta. Jonathan, on the other hand, Democrats are going, where did we go wrong? Try to pick up the pieces. And Bill Maher is telling Democrats it's time for them to look in the mirror. Listen.
My message to the losers, look in the mirror. No? Well, maybe you should. Sorry. Well, that's my feeling. Losers look in the mirror, okay?
And Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi are trading shots after the crushing losses. Is this civil war on the horizon for the Democratic Party?
No. I mean, look, the truth of the matter is this is how the country works, right? I mean, this is the country ebbs and flows. One party gets power, another party gets power, one party gets power. We tend to sort of trade off in terms of the presidencies. We get a Democratic president, a Republican president. That's just how this works. It's just the way it goes. One thing I will say, though, is I was really, really disheartened to hear Nancy Pelosi and people trying to blame President Biden. And I mean, she said, if I got that right, she said he should have dropped out sooner. And I'm like, maybe you shouldn't have forced out a person that 14 million primary voters and 81 million voters in the previous election chose to be the person they wanted to lead the party. And perhaps she should be doing some introspection instead of trying to blame the person that voters chose and then chose again in the primaries. But she seemed adamant about forcing out a person because she was afraid of what ended up happening anyway. So yeah. It's just the way the system works, though. It's that we trade off power.
Yeah, some of the exit polling is reflecting that, that people are going, it seems as if she was almost coronated. The other thing that Nancy Pelosi mentioned in that interview is that when Biden endorsed Kamala Harris, that also put them into a place where they couldn't have a rushed primary, essentially.
Which was insane because they would have only had a month to have an open primary. I mean, it was an absolutely unforced error. And if you look at the numbers, Donald Trump has either less, according to Newsweek from an article yesterday, or about the exact same amount of voters that he got when he decisively lost the election in 2020. What happened was it's that millions, 10 million plus Democratic voters, Joe Biden voters, didn't show up. And look, I'm not trying to take that away. A win is a win, even if the other team doesn't show up. But he got about the same or less that he got in 2020. The question is, where were the voters, the Democratic voters? That's what handed this over to Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, history is going to tell us, right? We knew this one was going down in the history books no matter who won. Chris, Trump announced that he will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join his upcoming administration. Is he putting Haley aside because of her previous criticisms of him, or is he just trying to start fresh? What do you think?
I think he's just starting to start fresh. I mean, there's a ton of options. You know, why bother working with someone that you're not going to be able to hit the ground running with? I think part of it's freshening up. He's had the benefit now of all of the early staffing last time, all of the sort of growing pains. I think they'll be able to get into a stride and get moving quicker. And they did a really good job of establishing a very strong broad coalition. They have clear economic goals, clear regulatory goals. He's done incredible things inside the VA, reforming the VA and the way the workforce works and taking on the VA union when it had problems and other agencies. Ooh. I think he's going to have a running start. And I think that making some of these selections, they're better to vet folks and make decisions they're comfortable with as they move forward.
Jonathan, I want to get to you. We're hearing that President Biden and President-elect Trump are set to meet in the Oval Office on Wednesday. How do you think this meeting's going to go?
Oh gosh, it's just there's no greater contrast than Donald Trump causing a terrorist attack and trying to undermine 4 years of President Biden's administration because he was fired by the American people. He didn't stage this meeting for President Biden. He did not do this for President Biden. But of course, the Democrats are magnanimous. They're the adults in the room. And so they always rise to being the more appropriate person. And what I would like is to see President Biden be more resistive to this. I mean, look, Donald Trump ran a campaign on overt. I mean, it wasn't even subtle racism, targeting.
Totally not true, Jonathan, and you know it. You know that's ridiculous.
I let you speak, Chris. I let you speak. It's not up for discussion. I wasn't asking a question. He ran an overt campaign on racism, targeting legal immigrants in this country. He was the people that are legally in this country. These are facts. And to have the Democrats sort of respond to that by going, well, we want to be the adults in the room. We want to have, we want to make sure that we rise to the occasion. That's not what Democrats want. That's not what the rest of the country that didn't want this man elected wants. They want, and to the credit of Democratic governors, they are all talking about forming plans to make sure that they're resisting a lot of what Trump is trying to do, taking away women's rights to choose and all that. But I would like to not see President Biden do the thing he always does and try to be the bigger person, because he's doing it with someone who clearly would not do that for him. And Chris, I'm sorry if you don't like the fact that I said that. I don't.
The stats don't add it up. Latin men would disagree with you.
Chris, I'm gonna let you go ahead. You hop in.
You can look at the campaign that was run and the exit polling, and then you can try and make the case that it was something else.
Jonathan, I love you, but you guys just got smoked on the merits of the issues. I think what it would be is that it was difficult
did last time
for Harris to move on from the fact that she was in the administration for 3 years. You can't have policy issues where you don't take definitive positions, like the proposition in California. So the minority support for Trump increased. So I think that would just dispute what you said with facts, and that's why you guys lost. You need to do an evaluation and not look back to the past.
Is that why you guys lost last time?
All right, Jonathan, I want to get your take on how you think former President Trump, now the president that we are going to have for the next 4 years, how can he heal the country? It's something that obviously needs to happen. Your candidate, Kamala Harris, said that we need to be talking about the things that unite us and as Americans and not divide us. Of course, that was a campaign line of hers. But it is important. The world is on fire. We've got wars going on in the Middle East and in Europe. What can happen in this meeting on Wednesday? What do you hope happens realistically?
I mean, the truth is Donald Trump has backed himself into a corner. And Chris, I love you dearly. We've been on shows with each other for many years. But the truth is Donald Trump ran the campaign that I said. And the problem is Trump has backed himself into a corner because he can only do one of two things. He can leave President Biden's economy in place, which is on fire. President Biden's economy is incredible, lowest unemployment we've had for almost 5 decades, et cetera, for this period of time, et cetera. Or he can do his policies, which have been analyzed with tariffs and so on and so forth, that would hurt the economy and cause a recession. He can target legal Muslims in this country, like the Haitians he lied on during the campaign. He can do all these things, targeting women's autonomy over their body and treating them differently than men's bodies. He can do all of those things, but he'll further division in the country. So he's really boxed himself into a corner where he either does the extreme things that are very unpopular with the American people that are divisive. He can try to be a dictator on day one. He can try to suspend the Constitution, as he said he should be able to do.
Look, okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Both sides, we're one calling one a communist, the other calling the other a fascist. We're going to have to leave it there. I apologize. We are out of time. GOP strategist Chris Neiweem and Democratic political commentator Jonathan Harris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Hannah.